Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to a major edition of the Media Row podcast. Yes, it is going to be a huge show. So welcome, get buckled in. We're going to have a lot of fun because today we have not only a former NFL player in Ray Roberts joining us to give us a breakdown of the NFL playoffs that are kicking off this weekend, but we have a lot of great Valley talk to kick off today's show with, because we have Drake Bradley tonight. We'll start off with that game, of course. We'll do our Wednesday Valley standings updates for both the men and women's side of things. But both the men and women have some really early conference defining games coming up here, as some of the top teams will be in some heavyweight battles. You have Drake Bradley today, but Drake goes on this nice little 2-game stretch where they take on Bradley on the road and Belmont at home on the men's side of things. And then the women on their side, they get to take on Belmont on Friday. So should be a lot of fun to preview. So we'll get to all of that and our standings and much more. But first and foremost, if you have yet to click that subscribe button or like, comment, rate, whatever you need to do, make sure to please do that. Love the support. It goes a long ways, even though it takes you 2 seconds to click that button. And then go support local as well with Kelly's Little Nipper, 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Love Kelly's Little Nipper. You will too, because they have great food, great drinks, but just better people. At 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines, Kelly's Little Nipper, a proud sponsor of the Media Row podcast. So we have a lot to get to. Let's jump right into it, starting off with previewing tonight's game, the game we're going to be locked in on. And yes, that's the 8-7 Drake Bulldogs traveling on the road to face 10-6 Bradley at 8 o'clock. A game that is always circled on your calendar. Whenever you get that Missouri Valley Conference schedule as a Bulldog fan, you look for Bradley, you look for UNI. Those are the 2 games you circle right away. And this one's going to be a challenge for both teams because it's been a weird start to the season. These are 2 teams that have faced off in some fantastic battles over the last 4 years, but they've been the 2 Valley contenders in St. Louis in 2 of the last 3 years. They met in the semifinals in 2024, so they always meet up with high stakes. And so maybe the stakes aren't as high, of course, today in January, but this is a big opportunity, not only for a Bulldog team that is hoping to build on this momentum that they were able to garner last time out against Indiana State, but you also have a Bradley team that is young and still figuring itself out, has improved a little, but they got off to a really weird start to begin this year as well. So you look at these 2 teams, they didn't have the start most Bradley and Drake fans are accustomed to seeing. Bradley went 1-3 in their first 4 games. They went 3-4 in their first 7. And as someone who likes covering the Valley as a whole, not only just covering Drake, one of the things I do is I like to see how fans are reacting on social media. And that's not always true to what the team actually is. I do watch the games, but that's kind of how you get your first feel. You test the waters with how fans are reacting on Twitter. And I remember in those first 7 games, Bradley fans were livid. And not livid to the point of asking for Wardle's head or anything like that, but they were very disappointed. Very similar to what we saw with Drake. But the difference being, I remember watching a preseason interview with Brian Wardle, and he kind of warned the fans, and he warned the people that are going to be following the Valley that it wasn't going to be pretty. Now, was he telling us that he was expecting to lose 4 of the first 7 games? Absolutely not. But it was kind of a nudge of like, don't be shocked if this is a slow start. And he said he was going to really figure out this young team by that Christmas break. And they really turned things around. Bradley has made some great improvements. 7-2 in their last 9. Their losses being to some of the top teams in the Valley. Now, they haven't been close losses against these top tier Valley teams, but they lost by 10 to Belmont and lost by 20 the last time out against Murray State. But again, very similar to the Drake Bulldogs. Drake, they started 4-3 in their first 7. They went 2-4 in their last 6. But we saw some X's and O's improvements. But unlike for Bradley, Drake just couldn't get those wins to follow. Drake would go on to go 2-4 in their last 6. They're now 2-1 in their last 3. So you're starting to see the wins follow. But that loss against Illinois State still kind of leaves a bitter taste in a lot of Drake fans' mouths. I do still believe that Indiana State win at home and the fashion they won that game, and with it being a tight, close game and a really gritty victory for Drake, a type of game that they have lost time and time again throughout the season, that is very promising. And Drake, the fans really needed it. I do still believe that the coaches and players needed that morale booster just as much too, especially when you are starting to lose guys like Exact with his foot injury. You see this Drake team starting to pile up this morale win. Maybe it can lead to a nice little win streak, and this would be a perfect time to do it against some not the top dogs in the Valley at this exact moment, but 2 teams you expect to contend for that top spot, with being on the road at Bradley and then being at home in a whiteout this Saturday against Belmont. This is just going to be a fun matchup though tonight. And you have 2 teams again that they mirror each other, where both teams have great size. Drake, it was all we heard during the offseason was size and versatility. And then when you saw them take the court for the first time, I remember talking to a lot of people being like, wow, this is the first time I've seen Drake actually have a size advantage for the first time this year. But they've struggled to impose their will with their size. Same exact thing with Bradley. Bradley has had a great history with some really great front court players. You had Hannah, who could spread the floor. You have Rink Mass, who gave Darnell Brody issues in the paint. They have always had some great size. And this year, they have 6 players over that 6'8" size. You have Janovic, who has been there for a while. But man, they really struggle. Both Drake and Bradley are sitting right now in that 8 to 9 range in the Valley in total rebounds. And it is odd to watch because you see these 2 teams take the floor, and it feels like more often than not, they're the bigger team, and yet they struggle with the glass. So that's just going to be a key right off of the start, is the rebound battle for both of these teams. But what I'm really excited to watch tonight is that battle in the backcourt between 2 of the conference's best guards. For Drake, you have Jalen Quinn, the leader, 17.3 points per game, 19 points per game in the last 5 games with playing a full game. I'm going to throw that Evansville game kind of in the trash for him stat-wise because he didn't play that first half, so he only scored 9 points. But in a game that he has played a full 40 minutes, he's averaging 19 points per game. And then on the other side, you have Jaquan Johnson, who is sitting there with 17.2 points per game, is one of the smallest guards, but plays as one of the biggest. I mean, he is built like a running back, and he has no fear driving into the chest of anyone and guarding anyone. I remember there was times in St. Louis, there'd be a mismatch where he got put on like Cam Manyow, and he could physically keep up with Manyow. I mean, that is the kind of build and the aggressiveness Jaquan Johnson has. So this is just going to be a great guard battle. But to each of these teams' points, you can't rely on these guards to be your only offense. For Drake, we've talked about it, of this team really has to get going downhill, but be able to kick out and be under control. That was one of the biggest reasons Drake was able to overcome the adversity throughout the Indiana State game, was because they were balanced offensively. It wasn't just Jalen Quinn scoring the ball, and they didn't panic. When Quinn would drive into the lane or Thomas would drive into the lane, they would be able to pivot and find kickouts around the wing. And that's going to be vital for Drake tonight. For Bradley, same thing. They can't just rely on Johnson being the offense. And you've seen throughout these Valley losses what happens when teams are able to slow down Jaquan Johnson. In the 2 Valley losses, he's averaging 6 points per game. And that is dangerous for this Bradley team because they have opportunities depth-wise, but they struggle at times to really maneuver the ball and keep it moving. It's the same, again, it feels like you watch the same team. When you watch Drake and Bradley, you see a lot of similarities between these two teams, and that's what's going to make tonight so exciting. So, other keys that I'm looking for with tonight's game. Number one, both teams can't rely on their stars. For Drake in particular, that perimeter defense has to get off to a quicker start. They let Indiana State hit 7 threes in that first half. Indiana State, a team that just couldn't keep up down the stretch with Drake. Drake made some great adjustments in that second half. Indiana State just couldn't nail a shot in that second half. Drake kept them scoreless for the last 5 minutes. That's all great, but you need to see that consistency through 40 minutes, especially against a team like Bradley, because Bradley's going to make you pay with 7 threes. They're not going to let up like we saw an Indiana State team do, because Indiana State doesn't have a great defense. Bradley and Wardle, I trust that defense. I really do. And this is going to be a fun defensive battle. But it starts on the perimeter for Drake. And that's why I want to see Jalen Quinn and why he's so important tonight, of coming off and starting this game with great aggressiveness. I feel like I've said it the last 3 games. I want to see Jalen Quinn open up a game like he opened up that second half against Evansville, just in the back pocket of the starting guard bringing up the ball, because that changed the momentum and the outcome in that Evansville game. I think you saw a little bit of that from the team as a whole in that second half against Indiana State. Now it's just putting it together for a full 40 minutes. So a huge 2-game test begins tonight at Bradley, and then you're at home against Belmont on Saturday. These are 2 Valley contenders where you're trying to measure yourself up against. Fans, we all believe that and hope that the Indiana State victory is a morale booster, is a confidence booster, can maybe kickstart this season in a different direction than it started. But that begins tonight, because beating an Indiana State team at home is one thing. It's nice to get that off your chest of, struggling at home, not having a Division I victory at home this season. You get that off of your chest and off of your mind, where your mind is in a better position to go and play now on the road against Bradley and then come back home against Belmont. This is a very important 2-game stretch for just measuring where Drake is at, because I don't think, throughout November and December, I said it multiple times of, this team's just figuring itself out. Now we're in January, and if Drake drops both these games, Bradley and Belmont, and they're not even close, if they look like the Illinois State game, then we're going to have to come back on Monday and have a deeper and darker conversation. But hopefully that's not the conversation we're having. Hopefully we have the conversation of this season turning around, beginning with tonight's game against Bradley. Should be a fun one, 8 o'clock. Follow along at Media Row Pod on Twitter, as we'll be doing our typical in-game updates as we always do. All right. Before we get to Ray Roberts, we want to do our Wednesday Missouri Valley Conference standing update, starting with the men. You have 3 teams trying to separate themselves. I know we were just talking about how Belmont and Bradley are 2 teams that can easily contend for a Missouri Valley Conference title. You have 3 teams in Illinois State, Murray State, and UNI really starting to separate themselves. And when you watch them play, you see that separation. Drake fans got firsthand experience against Illinois State. But you have 3 teams undefeated. Murray State 5-0, and they have an easy next three games. Their next 3 conference opponents have a combined 2 Valley Conference wins. So you definitely expect them to improve to 8-0. Illinois State, UNI both at 4-0. And UNI has a huge test tonight against Belmont at 6 o'clock. At home, this is going to be must watch. Watch this one, and then once this one's over, you have the Drake game starting at 8 o'clock. It's like the Valley gods set up this game perfectly for Iowan Valley fans, where we'll give you 6 o'clock for UNI, 8 o'clock for Drake. But you have Panthers 4-0, first time in the Valley since 2009 and 10. We all know how special that year was for UNI. And if you're listening, the picture I just showed up there was, of course, the huge 3 in the NCAA tournament against Kansas. But this is going to be a really interesting battle because you have UNI, the nation's best defense. They're only giving up 57.3 points per game. Jacobson, the defense he is putting out on the floor is incredible. I mean, one of the best Valley defenses we've seen in a while. McCollum last year with Drake was fantastic. It is up there with just always in your back pocket, fundamentally sound. They don't foul a lot, yet they're right in your face and they're so physical, but they're just fundamentally sound. It's really pretty to watch. I know defensive games may not always be the best. You know, the Valpo UNI game was kind of ugly, but you respect it. And you have this UNI defense playing some of their best basketball. Then you have Belmont, who for a while there looked like they were starting to break out of that Bruin shell and show more balance. Because for the last 4 years, with me in particular, watching Belmont was live by the 3, die by the 3. If they're fine with just outscoring their opponent, they don't care if their opponent scores 94 or not. You were hoping they were breaking out of that shell. Now it seems like they're starting to fall back into it, really just relying on that 3 ball. If shots aren't falling, they kind of get emotional. They wear it on their sleeve, and it's tough for them to break out. You also have to put in consideration who they were missing in some of those games, because they were without a starter in Sam Orme, who is averaging 13 points per game, spreads the floor. Duh, of course he spreads the floor. This is an Alexander coach Belmont team. Everyone can shoot. But when you lose a guy like that, yeah, you're going to struggle against Indiana State. That has a good offense and is going to challenge your defense. And Bradley's going to challenge you, even though they won that game. But SIU challenged Belmont, and it's because Sam Orme was not on the floor. Missed 2 of the last 3 games. And it's going to be a very interesting game for Belmont. They want to show off that they can play balanced, but they need to get that 3 ball going, and it's just a tough draw that they have to do it against an UNI Panthers squad that is playing some incredible defense, and it's on the road. So that one at 6 o'clock tonight. If you're asking me to make a pick, I think UNI wins this one because I've always been a strong believer in defense, and that UNI defense is legit. All right, let's jump in to our Missouri Valley Conference women's basketball standings. Fun Friday coming up here for the Missouri Valley Conference on the women's side. But first, you have a 5-way tie for first. UNI 4-0, Belmont 4-0, Drake and Murray State both 3-0. And then you have a huge drop-off. On the men's side, you see teams like Drake, Indiana State, who can be dangerous. Maybe they turn some things around. Drake, you have a little more confidence in them turning around their season maybe than Indiana State. I don't know. That could just be Drake biased. But there's more in the middle that can be scary for those top teams, even though Illinois State, Murray State, and UNI are trying to separate themselves. You don't have that on the women's side. On the women's side, you have 6 teams with 1 or less wins in the Valley. And it's a big drop off. UIC, I think right now, is sitting in with a 500 record. And we saw what Drake was able to do to them. So they don't really feel right now like they're a contender or can play with the contending teams. But like I mentioned, Friday is huge in just having the Valley's best going head to head. UNI is on the road against the Valley reigning champs in Murray State. And then you have Belmont coming into town against Drake. And we'll do more of a deep dive preview on that Belmont Drake game on Friday's show. But definitely a fun and exciting time in the Valley for both the men and the women. Women tip off against Belmont Friday at the Knapp Center. We have Drake tonight taking on Bradley. And then Saturday, Drake again at home against Belmont. So that will do it for our Missouri Valley Conference standings and our Drake previews. Let's now welcome into the show former Seattle Seahawk, Ray Roberts, to help us kick off the NFL playoffs. So Ray, welcome back to the show. It's been a while. Hope everything's been good. I know you and I, before I clicked record, were reminiscing about the Thursday night victory against the Rams and what has been an amazing season. For me as a diehard Seahawk fan, you with being so close to the organization, just a season that is special and has definitely surpassed a lot of people's expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you listen to a lot of the experts, they were probably projecting them to win like 7 or 8 football games. And then, on our pregame show, myself and Paul Moyer and Brian Walters and Michael Bumpus, we always, at the beginning of the year, we kind of try to predict what we think the record is going to be. And we all fell somewhere between that 10 to 11 game range. And for me, I wasn't real sure what they were going to get out of Sam Darnold. I wasn't completely sold on Sam Darnold. And then when I looked at the receiver room, I'm like, man, like, where are they going to get some explosive plays? JSN just didn't seem like the fast twitch, muscle fiber, beat people down the field dude. And Cooper Kupp is not the Cooper Kupp of old, So I'm just thinking like, man, like, where is this going to come from? And man, all they've done is just erase all of those doubts. I mean, Sam Darnold had his stumbles at some point during the year, but JSN just killing it. 119 catches, 1,700 yards, and 10 touchdowns, and is a bona fide deep threat, underneath threat, intermediate threat. Like, he's like the dude for real, for real. Like, I honestly did not see that in him. And so it's been really cool to watch that. And I'll tell you, the other thing that's really cool is how the team has taken on the mindset of Mike McDonald. Like, he is a no nonsense, locked in, connected, connection type of a person. Like, he wants to feel connected to the people that he works with, and the team has become that. And to me, that's one of those things you can't measure. That's one of the things that the Sabre Matrix and the advanced data and all that stuff can't speak for, is the stuff that he intentionally built this year that has made the difference for this football team.
I'm glad you brought up Coach McDonald because I assume you've met him. Have you met him a couple of times? So
Yeah.
You've played in the NFL. You've been around some amazing coaches in your time and your playing time. When you first met Coach McDonald, what were some of the characteristics that stood out to you where you're like, oh, if he gets the right roster, this could change pretty fast in Seattle?
Here's the thing that stood out to me is, first, he was real, his thought about offensive football or about football in general is real similar to Pete Carroll's. They just go about it differently. They want to be physical, they want to run the football, and they want to play tough physical defense. They both want that. They just go about it a little bit differently. So the first time we met Coach McDonald, he was explaining to us like his thought pattern. But then he was like, but I give the assistant coaches the leeway to just go down a rabbit hole and just go like, hey, I think we should maybe try this. And he was like, so I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But that's the way you are. That's how you become innovative. That's how you find new ideas and things. And Coach Carroll wasn't quite like that. Coach Carroll was like, this is how we're doing it 24/7, 365. We're doing it this way. And so I thought that was really interesting because when you meet him, man, he's so steely-eyed. Coach McDonald is locked in, wants a football 24/7 type of a dude. And like when we were standing around him, I felt like I needed to go like,
Need to salute him.
hey, like, yes, sir. Like, it just seemed like, you know what I'm saying? He just seemed like that. You know, he's all muscular and his little medium shirts on and stuff, his little arms and chest. And I was just like, what? Yeah, what, coach? Sergeant? Like, it's like, what do I call
So
you?
it took you back to like your playing days of like, oh my God, that's the coach. Everybody button up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Straight,
But
stand
then
up
like,
straight.
and that was his first year. But then this year, he just became a little bit more approachable because I felt like he's more secure in who he wants to be and how he wanted the team to be. And the way that one of the things that really struck me too was they asked him what did he do during the offseason. He said the first thing I did is I watched all the teams that made the playoffs and the teams that were in the Super Bowl. And so they're like, oh, like looking for strategy, da 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 da. He's like, no, I was looking for what made them different. And he's like, I found two things. One was their connectedness and their toughness. And he's like, so I'm going to do things this offseason that foster that in our team. So he started doing these meetings where he would have offensive coaches meet with defensive players meet with offensive players, because he wanted everyone to get to know each other as people, because then that creates a connectedness. And then in the connectedness, it breeds the toughness. And that has, if you listen to post game comments by the players, listen how many times you hear connected and connectedness, because they're all bought into it. And you can hear even reporters that have been around this organization for a long time through the Pete Carroll years and everything. And they go, this is the most connected team I've ever been around. And to me, that has made the difference. Because if you're connected, you're playing for the person next to you. You know what I'm saying? You're not playing with them, you're playing for that person. So you're willing to sacrifice. You're gonna make sure you're on top of your game, know your assignments, all these different kind of things, because you want that person to succeed. And then they're able to play this brand of football where they're super physical on defense, swarming like that performance against San Francisco. I don't even remember a missed tackle. Like it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I don't remember guys even falling forward when they were getting tackled. Like they were locked in. And then because the 49ers defense had some issues, the running game was spectacular. Like nothing better than that 15-yard or 19-yard pickup for the first down and then seeing
Yeah.
John Lynch go crazy. And then and here's the other thing that's cool about that play. I know I'm getting long-winded. Is if you
No.
go back and watch the replay, you'll watch the blocks by the receivers, by JSN, Cooper Cup, and Bobo. And at the end of the run, you'll see JSN and Bobo just celebrating like they just scored a touchdown.
That's
That's
awesome.
connected. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's, you can't measure that with the 40 time or bench press or vertical or whatever other catching, metrics that you want to have. You can't measure that. Like they're going like, man, like we just picked up this first down running the ball and we blocked to do that. We helped block to do that. You know what I'm saying? If you watch it, like I'll send you the video of it. They were just like, yeah, like the way they were celebrating that they got the first down. That's a different type of connectedness than that we've seen around here in a long time.
Does this defense have a nickname around Seattle? We had the Legion of Boom, and on Monday's show, I called them the Swarm because, like you
Oh, okay.
mentioned, against San Francisco, it felt like a guy would catch the ball or they'd hand it off, and you'd blink, and there's 8 Seahawks around them. Is
Yeah.
there a nickname around Seattle?
Well, it's a little bit of a, like some people feel like you got to win a playoff game before you have a nickname, but I don't
That's
really care. It's
understandable.
like, but for me, whatever keeps you motivated. Like, I don't
Yeah,
care if
yeah.
you have a nickname. But the other day after the game, they asked Leonard Williams, like, hey, you had the Legion of Boom. Like, do you guys have a nickname? And so he, made his praises and respects to Legion of Boom. And he said, well, we call ourselves the Dark Side. And I'm like,
Ooh, I
it's
don't
not as
mind that
it's
one.
not as marketable as Legion of Boom. But hey, I like the Dark Side. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
don't hate
easy.
it.
Yeah, and so I can rock with the dark side because I was thinking the same thing you were thinking right before you said, I'm like, man, we need to come up with a name for this defense. And then some reporter asked the question, and then Leonard said that they called themselves the dark side. So I can rock with the dark side. There's some bad things. The dark side to me indicates like bad intentions, and you have to play football that you have to play defense that way. You know what I'm
Well,
saying? You got to have some bad
and you
intentions.
definitely won't catch me, and I bet a lot of reporters won't tell Leonard Williams that he's wrong or that they don't like it because that dude, I mean, I
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
goes, he would be a guy I'd be
I
saluting.
know. It's like, yes, sir, Leonard.
Yes, sir.
Whatever you say, Dick. Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to get you on the show today because not only just to talk about my favorite team in the Seahawks, because I'm an outlier here in Iowa. There's not many Seahawk fans around me.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to get you on to just talk about the playoffs as a whole. But first, I want to recap this regular season because was
Hmm.
this the best regular season in the NFL like ever? You had the
Yeah.
Seahawks Thursday night game, you had the Bears Packers, you had Bears
Hmm.
49ers all within like 4 weeks of each other, and the Steelers Ravens game to finish the
Oh, that
regular
was
season
crazy.
too.
Yeah.
Just where is this stacked up for you in your time from being a NFL reporter and
Hmm.
following this
I would say
league?
it's right up there because like there's a power change. Like the Chiefs are no longer the dominant franchise organization. Their run, I'm not going to say it's over, but it's over for now. So they
Mhm.
can always retool and get back at it. But anytime there's like a shift in power like that, it creates an opportunity for this type of stuff to happen. I just never seen it happen on such a dynamic platform like it did this year. Like all the games that went down to the wire. The last game that was just ridiculous, like the way that Steeler and Ravens game ended, and all the games in between, the way the Seahawks came back, down 16 points or whatever it was with 7 or 8 minutes left, and then you went on a 2-point conversion. And even in that one game in itself, the Seahawks had in 170 some tries had never come back to win from being down 16 points or
Yeah,
more in the fourth quarter.
crazy.
Like the backwards pass that ended up being a fumble and a 2-point conversion. And then there had never been an NFL game that had been won on the 2-point conversion. And so there's so much that just wrapped up into that one game. And then like you said, the battles at the Bears are kind of become like the cardiac Bears. They just
Yeah.
they find a way to win it in the end. And is that sustainable? I don't know, but it got them to where they are. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And then you see the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of stumble out of the gates, and then now Trevor Lawrence is playing like the guy that everyone thought that he was going to be. So there's so many things that are just happening in the league that are just like you can just feel the shift, and people
Yeah.
can call it parody or whatever it is. But I feel like when people realize that the top dog is no longer the top dog, man, it's a fight to become the top dog. And you can see everybody putting their best effort, best coaching, best plan, best down to the wire plays and strategies, all putting it in play to be the new person on the top. And I think that spurs a lot of it.
Well, and what's unique about this season in my eyes too is so like when the Patriots, Brady leaves and they get knocked out against the Titans at home and you have
Hmm.
all the drama there. You saw the Chiefs already, go to the AFC
Yeah,
Championship and be right there. You'd seen the team that appeared to be the next team up. This
yeah,
year, there's not really, you haven't really seen who is the clear cut favorite on the NFC or AFC side of things
right.
now that the Eagles have kind of stubbed their toe a little, don't look as strong as they
Hmm.
were a year ago. And then, of course, the Chiefs being out of the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you look at uh the teams that are like getting all the hype. The Chicago Bears hadn't been there in a while. The Seahawks have been relevant, but not like Super Bowl contender relevant. More
Mhm.
like they can make the playoffs. relevant. The Denver Broncos sound like they've been knocking at the door for since Sean Payton has been there, but they hadn't quite figured out the combination yet. But then they got good defense and the quarterback's playing good, and it seemed like the coach and the quarterback have a good relationship. So you have that thing going, and then the coach at Jacksonville overcame the Duval announcement that he kind of loved a little bit, and has been able to get
People will quickly
that
forget
thing.
about that awkwardness
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
start
yeah,
winning
yeah.
some
And
games.
so it is really interesting to see like some of these teams that are coming up. And then like if you just look at the NFC West, the NFC West, the Rams, the Seahawks, the 49ers, they might be the three best teams in the NFL. And they might have the three best coaches in the NFL. For the 49ers to be where they are with all the injuries they had to start the season, man, that's a great coaching. That was great coaching. And then, you look at the Rams, and for Matthew Stafford to be playing like he's playing at his age and at this stage in his career, like if he's not the MVP, then like he should get the MVP just because of making it an old man, like longevity kind of thing. And then the look away passes and all that kind of stuff.
He's
And then you look at
incredible.
a guy like, Coach McDonald that is
Hmm.
just like a lot of times in our pregame, we would talk about just the chess match between the coaches because it was just as exciting as the players on the field is because you have these gurus like McVay and his offensive mind and McDonald and his defensive mind and Shanahan with all of his motions and making plays look the same and blah blah blah. Being able to it was just incredible the coaching that has elevated around the league. And so you look at Ben Johnson in Chicago where what he was
Hmm.
able to do and getting the best out of Caleb Williams where it looked like he may have been not the guy that people thought he was, and now he's starting to look like the guy that you thought he was going to be. And so there's been some great coaching along with some of the great play, and then this shift in the power that you see in the league.
I've seen this question posed all over social media. My friends have asked me this question as well, and I'm gonna need me as well, to take
Yeah,
off our Seahawk biased
yeah, yeah.
glasses right now. Which top seed do you trust the most to make it to the Super Bowl to go on this run?
Man, which top seed did I, other than the Seahawks? It's hard to take off the Seahawk hat because they're playing at home. If they were going on the road, I would probably pick somebody else. But it's hard to come here and win. And you've just played the week before. They're going to have some time off, that kind of stuff. The Broncos, I mean, they kind of scare me a little bit because they've been playing good football without a whole lot of fanfare. And so, like they when you start talking about the top teams and stuff like that and players, no one mentions a whole lot of Broncos. And so sometimes that can be the team that kind of reminds me of like the Giants when they would have like Eli Manning, and they're just making the wild card. Nobody expects a whole lot out of them, and they go win two Super Bowls, like that kind of a thing. And so it's really hard, man, because like you're just in the Seahawk juice all the time, and
Hmm.
this how they've kind of turned around their play at home and to know how loud it gets here and how it impacts games. Um, Man, it's gonna be hard to come here and you're gonna get a 4 or 5 turnovers from Sam Darnold or that offense to be able to have a chance to beat the Seahawks here because you're not gonna score 30 points. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna you maybe score 14, 15 points would be a lot for this defense. And then you'd have to keep our offense off the out of the end zone. So it's hard to take off the hat and pick anybody other than the Seahawks.
As a
Yeah.
Seahawks fan, I love hearing it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I mean, to your point though, Darnold had 4 interceptions in LA, and
Hmm.
we were 12 or 2 feet away from
Yeah,
Myers making a field goal and still winning that game. And
yeah.
that was Darnold's toughest performance of the year.
If you think about it, look at the look, if you would think about the Seahawks differently, if they had those 2 more yards and they made that field goal, that would have meant that they beat the Rams twice.
Hmm.
And then in the 49er game, they were about to score a touchdown to take the lead with less than 2 minutes left. And Abe Lucas got knocked into Sam Darnold. He fumbled the ball on like the 15-yard line.
That's
So
right.
so that
I've tried to try to block that one out.
there were two plays away from being 4-0 against two of the teams that everyone thinks are the two of the top teams in the league. And everyone's afraid to say Seattle is the best team because they want to question Sam Darnold. But he was 2 plays away from being 4-0 against two of the teams that you think are the best or could be Super Bowl favorites.
So who's your dark horse then to win the Super Bowl? If you can't pick one, the favorites of Seattle and Denver, is
It
there a
may
team
not be
like
a
Houston that has been on a win streak?
Well, it may not be a dark horse, but I think people just forget that when you've won the championship, you know how to win the championship. And regardless of all the stuff that is going on with the coaching and the players or the offense not looking good, it's hard that you can't measure the heart of a champion. And so the Philadelphia Eagles know what it takes to win the Super Bowl. They know what it takes to get there. They also know what it takes to win it. And so, but because of all their shenanigans and the coach may not be the most personable, approachable dude, and Jalen Hurts is only going to give you the best quotes in the history of the world. Press conference, they're always going to look like he and the receivers are not on the same page, and all this other kind of stuff. And people can use that to count them out, but I wouldn't count them out. I would not count them out. And then something about Denver just makes me nervous. It just it
They've been able to pull out. I felt like every time I watched or looked on the scoreboard, they were winning games by a score of like 15-13. Just kind of these
yeah,
ugly
yeah.
defensive physical battles. And yeah, I'm with you. That scares me moving on.
Yeah. Because
Uh,
Sean Payton's a good coach.
mhm.
People may not like him sometimes, but the guy he's getting the best out of the quarterback, and their defense is always good. And then sometimes people get bored with consistency. And then you tend to look for those shiny objects. And to me, they just been pretty consistent all year. They haven't been too up and they haven't been too down. They haven't been super dominating or whatever. They just been kind of right here, but just winning football games. And sometimes when you get to the playoffs, you just need that one thing on your team to kind of elevate. And I always tell people the first year that the Colts won the Super Bowl, they only rushed for about 70, 80 yards per game for the regular season. But the last game of the season, the regular season, they rushed for like 120 yards. And in that game, they found two running plays that worked. And through the rest of the playoffs, they averaged almost 140 yards a game rushing. And that's what pretty much won the Super Bowl for them. And so Howard Mudd, who was the offensive line coach, is a good friend of mine. And I said, dude, like, what did you guys do? He said, we found those two plays and we just dressed it up in a bunch of different formations and motions and stuff, but we pretty much ran the same two plays. And so that's why when I look at the Seahawks and the momentum they've gotten with this run game, you just got to get hot at the right time. And their run game, from a running back yards per game perspective, is ramping up at the right time.
So your podcast that you host, the Raise Garage, with
Yeah.
you do a lot of the mental health
Yeah.
conversations and involved in sports. With the playoffs, as a former player, how is that a another battle in itself for players to continue to stay level headed despite having to possibly go to Seattle, the loudest stadium
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
it feels like, and have all these screaming fans? What's the mental aspect of the playoffs?
The mental aspect is you got to, and it sounds like since we just mentioned, I'm going to use one of his most famous quotes. You got to keep the main thing the main thing. And so that means like your preparation. You can't, the first time I went to the playoffs, I didn't know what to expect. And so I was trying to do too much instead of just saying like, we've in a different part of the season, but it's still the same game. I've played for 16 weeks, and I was trying to do too much, probably over prepared, overthinking it, like trying to run harder, hit harder, run fast, like all this stuff. And then I had to remind myself, like, it's the same game you just played last week. It's a record. And so, like, for when you haven't been to the playoffs, it feels like that, like you have to do something extra. But really, what it comes down to is being able to regulate all of that emotion and regulate all of that excitement to go, like, okay, what got us here? And now, like strategically, there's some things you can change, but just your approach to the game, the way you study, the way you prepare, the way you rest, the way you do your workout, the way you eat, the free how you spend your free time, all that kind of stuff, it has to stay the same. Like obviously you get, like I said, you can get locked into the different strategy and stuff like that. But the minute you try to like do extra, that's when you mess it up. And you don't want to do less, but you don't want to do extra. because extra then makes you start to try to do things that maybe aren't yours to do. So maybe you're trying to work a little bit too hard on that double team to help the guard when you haven't had to do that all year, and now you mess up the whole double team. You don't get up to the linebacker or whatever. You spend too much time on the defensive tackle, like different things like that. So keeping the main thing, and then just keeping it all in perspective. And then that's why I think it's good for the Seahawks to have in a lot of metrics, if you want to call it, they have like one of the youngest teams in the league. And so it's going to take some of those guys like a Julian Love and a Big Cat and DeMarcus Lawrence, some of these dudes that have been in these situations, especially with this time off, like how to manage this time off. It's going to take some of them to have their voices to have power in the room so that people can come back and be locked in and ready that way.
Well, Ray, thank you again so much for
Oh,
doing this
absolutely,
for
man.
me. This was awesome. I'll be annoying you throughout the playoffs. Don't worry about that. Is there anything you would like to promote? Anything for the listeners to know that you have coming up? I know you're a very busy guy too.
Yeah. I don't really have anything coming up, but I will say this, with the new year and everything and resolutions and things that people make is that this is what I've come to the realization is that motivation is not the answer. Discipline is, because you can negotiate with motivation. Your motivation will then look at how you're feeling that day and say, like, I don't feel motivated, so I'm not going to go to the gym. But discipline says, you're going to go to the gym regardless of how you're feeling. Like discipline doesn't negotiate your feelings. You're either getting it done or you're not. And so I'm making that a big part of what my new year is going to be about, is just being more disciplined and like in all areas of my life. I can't just let my emotions and feelings dictate my motivation. And so discipline will be in place of that. So if you want to improve whatever it is that you're trying to do this year, whether it's spend more time, get in shape, write a book, hike a mountain, whatever it is, put your lean into the discipline of it, and not as much the motivation of it.
All right, might have to just clip that part and just have it on a loop every morning. That might be my new alarm clock.
Yes, sir.
But no, seriously, thank you so much, Ray. This was
Yes, sir.
awesome, and definitely won't be the last time
Well, hit me
we'll
up.
get
I
you on.
told you, hit me up anytime, and you got me.
A huge thank you to Ray Roberts for coming on the show. Greatly appreciate him taking time out of the day. Greatly appreciate you guys for letting me talk about my Seahawks there for a couple of minutes with Ray, but hopefully you got some good information from him just as the NFL as a whole. And go ahead, put in the comments who you think is going to advance to the Super Bowl, who you have the most confidence in, who's your dark horse. See if you agree with Ray and his picks. And it'll be a fun NFL playoffs, that is for sure. I keep telling people this is not just because Seattle's in it and is a 1 seed, but if Seattle was knocked out, this is one of the craziest seasons I've watched in the NFL in a long time, and I really think the playoffs are as balanced as they've been in years. So should be a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We'll have Ray Roberts on definitely again on the show. So huge thank you to Ray. Huge thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in and supporting the show. We will chat with you guys, of course, tonight throughout the game, and then on Friday as we preview what will be a fun weekend for Drake Sports and sports around the nation. We will see you Friday on the Media Row podcast.